This is the revision video for Unit B3, Selective Breeding and Genetic Engineering. What do you think selective breeding is? Since humans began to practice agriculture 10,000 years ago, they saved seeds from plants that had desired characteristics to grow the following year. In this way, wild grasses became genetically modified and evolved into cereal plants such as wheat and barley that we know today. Continued improvements in staple crops that form the bulk of people's diet, such as maize, wheat, millet, rice and potatoes, are important. We need crops that give a high yield, are resistant to diseases, do not bend and break in the wind, are resistant to drought, flooding and frost, taste good, have a long shelf life, and contain desired amounts of particular nutrients. This picture shows us an example of a plant which has been selectively bred. Oilseed rape originally produced an oil that is toxic to humans. Selective breeding has produced plants with edible oil. However, if we want to grow these plants for biofuel, the toxic plants would be better as their oil would release more energy. We can also selectively breed animals. Humans domesticated wolves, which eventually evolved into dogs. The wolves got food, the humans got protection, companionship and help with hunting. When humans started farming, they also began to domesticate animals such as sheep, goats, pigs, cattle and horses. Humans use the animals for meat, milk, bone, wool, hides, dung and to do work. They also chose the most docile and manageable animals. This picture shows us an example of an animal that has been selectively bred. Zebu cattle have been bred to tolerate hot, dry climates and are used in Africa because they can cope with the weather there. The process of selective breeding involves the following stages. Firstly, parents with the desired characteristics are selected. They are crossbred, and then the offspring that have inherited both characteristics are selected and crossbred again. This process is repeated over many generations until all offspring produced have all the desired characteristics. Selectively breeding animals has many advantages because it produces breeds of animals that have more muscle and less fat for lean meat, produce higher yields of milk, lay more eggs, reach maturity quicker, have better or more wool, and can run faster, such as racehorses and greyhound dogs. However, there are also some disadvantages to selective breeding. Inbreeding may lead to the loss of genetic variety. This could lead to an accumulation of harmful recessive characteristics and fewer resistant genes. There will be nothing to selectively breed a new strain from, and because all the animals are so closely related, they could all be wiped out by a new disease. What is genetic engineering? Genetic engineering is a faster way of genetically modifying organisms without going through a selective breeding program. Genetic engineering is used to change an organism and give it new characteristics. It involves the artificial transfer of genes from one organism to another to produce organisms with desired characteristics. Genetic engineering is carried out by cutting genes from one organism and transferring them into the genetic material of a completely different organism. Enzymes are used to cut DNA, to obtain a gene for a desired characteristic, and then to insert that gene into another organism's DNA. Organisms produced by genetic engineering are described as genetically modified. Some examples of the uses of genetic engineering include the manufacture of human hormones such as insulin, the manufacture of medicines and vaccines, and genetically modified foods such as golden rice. Insulin is used to treat people with diabetes. The insulin used to be obtained from pigs, but now the human gene for insulin can be inserted into a bacterium so that it produces insulin. This means that enough insulin can be produced to treat all the diabetic people who need it. There is also no risk of transferring diseases from pigs to humans. And people with diabetes who are vegetarian or vegan will have no reason to object because of the origin of the insulin. Golden rice is rice that has been genetically modified so that it makes beta-carotene. When people eat this rice, they turn the beta-carotene into vitamin A. Every year, thousands of children go blind due to lack of vitamin A in their diet. Golden rice is a good way of providing vitamin A to children in developing countries. Other examples of genetically modified crops include cotton plants that are resistant to pests, maize that is resistant to pests, bananas that are resistant to disease, and also bananas that contain more nutrients. Finally, tomatoes that are frost resistant. Changing a person's genes in an attempt to cure a disorder is called gene therapy. Gene therapy is a treatment in which copies of a functioning, normal gene may be inserted into certain body cells of a person who has a recessive genetic disease, such as cystic fibrosis. Unlike genetic engineering, gene therapy does not change an organism's genes permanently. Gene therapy does not cure, but treats some genetic diseases. So we know then that genetic engineering can be used to produce genetically modified crops. But why are some people so concerned about GM crops? GM technology can rapidly produce organisms with desired characteristics. However, many people worry that inserting genes into GM crops will have side effects. There are lots of benefits to GM crops, because crops can be developed to make them naturally resistant to pests, reducing the need to use pesticide chemicals that are harmful, higher yielding, reducing the need to use soil-damaging fertilisers, resistant to drought, reducing the need for precious water, beneficial to health by containing essential nutrients and vitamins. All this means that more people can be fed, as GM crops produce higher yields and GM farms may have increased productivity whilst using fewer inputs, so food costs could be cheaper. Most GM crops have been safe so far. However, there are also some concerns about GM crops, and we have to weigh these up against the benefits. Some of the concerns are: GM crops may change the ecosystem they are in ways that cannot be reversed. GM crops may cross-pollinate with wild plants, making it impossible to control genetic modification. Those who have a problem with the idea of eating GM foods won't buy it, meaning farmers may lose money. And poor farmers who would greatly benefit from the high yield of GM crops may not be able to afford the seeds for those crops.